Welcome to the Declutter Diaries. I'm your host, Bonnie Hintonack with Bin Your Space. In this episode, you'll meet Erin Lamb in our part 2 series of her outrageous organizing adventure. Let's jump back into it. I'm so glad you're here.
You've been saying a lot on your social media lately about your space is where you live. It should feel lived in.
Right.
It's not like you're trying to create this like picture perfect, everything is ready for the picture. Like that's not the way that we live. Your space can be lived in. But for people like me, I very much believed in what you were doing. I didn't really believe that it would have as much of an impact on me as it has. And I feel like I remember doing my kitchen and I was like, I'm just going to follow the recommendations. Like things like taking stuff out of the packaging. I was always kind of like, that's what organized people, that's what people who like pretty things need to do. Like you take like the Enneagram or whatever and they're like aesthetically pleasing things. Like that's a personality. I have some friends like that. Like they do not do well in a space that's not aesthetically pleasing. That's not me. It's not. And so I've always just kind of been like, that's very acceptable personality. It's not mine. But the clear bins, taking things out of the packaging, the cereal, I had the cereal boxes up on top of my fridge.
And I saw your clear containers up there. And
I still have
like,
the cereal on top of my fridge
okay.
Because again, my cabinets are just they're not tall. And so I can't fit things literally in them unless they're like on their side or whatever. So I'm sure there's other ways to solve it. But I remember going through it with the guide and I was like, you can't understand it unless you experience it. It's like one of those things that if you heard somebody talking, you'd be like, yeah, I agree. That makes sense. It's logical. Like, obviously, it's going to make you feel better. It's nice to have an organized space. But like at the end of the day, whatever. You have to experience it. I remember standing in my kitchen and I was like, you just don't know what difference it makes until you actually do it. So just follow what the recommendations are because you figured it out. Like, you've studied this stuff. You've been in lots of spaces. And so just trusting your professional guidance was really meaningful.
So do you feel like it was worth trying the cereal or the clear containers?
Yes.
So like going back to the taking out of the packaging, what changed for you?
Well, so here's what I didn't understand. I was like, I'm going to have to just like live in this for a while to see because remember I had cleared out my pantry and everything without having done my grocery shopping. And then I went grocery shopping and I was like, oh, what do I do? Like,
I remember that you were like,
no, nothing. Oh
no.
my gosh. It's hard to understand. You say like the bin is the boundary, which I like that concept. That made a lot more sense to me. But we have a pattern of a lot of the things that we buy are similar, right? We get the granola bars, we get the cheese sticks, we get the yogurt, we get milk. Like there's a lot of things. We have a very varied weekly cycle in a lot of seasons that we're in where we're eating at home every night but 2 nights. Some weeks it's like we're at soccer practice and karate and musical rehearsal and band practice every single night. And so we're not home having a meal. And so those seasons are really different than when we are home or we have school or we have whatever. So having like, this is where the granola bars go, I was like, that will literally never happen because I don't always have a snack that fits in a container like this. And I don't, it just didn't make sense to me to like create a space for stuff like that. And so that was the barrier. I know how much cereal I have. Duh.
Of course you do.
No, that's not true. You had to go check.
Right.
You would have
the
to go
container's
check.
not clear.
Yeah, no.
So
not only does it not look as nice, it looks like a disaster, honestly, when I like look back at the things. I'm like, But it actually does help you know what you have without having to go look. Like it's just as you live your life, all those things just, I don't know, it just makes things easier and prettier and more sustainable. And yeah, so I was like reserved at trying those things because I didn't really think it would make that much of a difference. Plus, it's hard to me to think of that for things like food that change constantly. I still have ways to go to figure out what the ideal is in like my pantry and stuff. But that's why I'm addressing my backstock because I hadn't addressed space where things can go. And so it's just been hard to do that.
Where is your backstock?
Well, nowhere right now.
Oh, okay, great.
Anywhere, all the places, nowhere.
Right. Okay.
So down in we call it our utility room, our laundry room, tools are there.
Yeah.
The sled is there. Right now the bikes are inside because it's been raining and we don't have a shed, like it can turn into whatever. But that's where all of our shelves and everything are. So I've got clothes in there from the kids they're going to grow into. I've got extra paper towels. And so there was just tons and tons of just like buildup of everything that gets dropped there. And so we've been hesitating to like clean out my closet from my bedroom because I know some stuff I actually want to store down there, but it doesn't have a place to go. So that was our blocker. And I'm like, okay, we've got this weekend. We, for the first time ever, don't have something on the calendar. Why don't we tackle that space? And so that's what we did. Felt like starting small was really helpful, but now figuring out what is the one thing I could do that would make everything else easier. And that was sort of the blocker to some of the other spaces that I want to tackle. So that's where we're at.
I really like that you're using the word barrier though, because as I'm thinking back to my journey with decluttering and organizing my own home, yes, one space does lead to another, but in order to create something like a backstock area where you have your ready to use items that don't need to be stored, upstairs in your pantry, you have to literally make space in order to start organizing, decluttering elsewhere. And then that's when things really start moving. I've been working with a client a couple hours a month. We're almost through her entire house, and it's just by doing a little bit at a time.
And this is like another thing, as I was going through the guide and I was like going through the clean process and all that, it's so obvious. But again, to people like me, like it's not the way my brain works or is to declutter before you organize. Again, duh. I think I would approach things before, like I would reorganize my baking cabinet like every year, right? I'd take everything out and then I'd put it all back in a way that was like better situated and whatever.
Until the next year,
right? The actual like clean everything out and get rid of a bunch of stuff, like...
That's not what it says in my guide.
I know, it doesn't say that, but the idea of like figuring out what do you still need, I didn't think I would have as much stuff in every single space that needed to be decluttered. So I wasn't going through that step. I was just like reorganizing the stuff that was in there without making that part of the process. And it completely changes what then you have to organize. Instead of trying to organize all the stuff, actually taking it out and going through like how you lay it out, it just actually works opposed to just like moving everything else around in that same space. Approaching it as an organization project was different than like the declutter to feel the freer space. And you live it, so you don't even think about it probably because it's obvious that's what you do.
Well, and I'm to a point where I'm not decluttering my home anymore.
Right.
Now, I want to.
Ryan, look out.
But like I do look at our bookshelf, which is sitting behind you. That is very, very, very pared down. But I've worked on that for a few years because it's a process. And, there are things that are on there that I've read that I've said I want to go back to. And then I give myself a year or two and I'm not going back there. I struggle with book clubs. So,
This is our second attempt together.
I'm trying.
I'm not great at it either. But I did
read. I really want to listen to we're doing Twilight. And I've never done this before in my life. I want to do it, but I want to do it as an audio. I don't think I'm going to be able to do it with a physical book in my hand. So anyway, all of that to say, this whole thing is a process. So I'm not ever done decluttering, but I'm just more intentional, gatekeeping what comes in my home, making sure where am I going to put that, that question is answered. Then I can help people with their space. And it literally is that touching everything. Yeah. Like you have to clear out your space because it's that defense mechanism of you open a cabinet and you're like, well, I use all of this or this, want to keep everything. You close the door. There's not going to be any movement there. Right. So the fact that you were able to use my guide, which is really sweet, to then see the difference, like I tell clients, I can organize all day long, but if you don't choose what you need and what you're going to use, then it's going to be hard for me to make it the space that you want it to be. And I tell clients too, like, I will organize anything that you want to keep. I just want you to evaluate the item that is being pulled out of this cabinet, shelf, or basket.
Yeah. I was glad to experience I experienced your social persona and then I experienced...
Persona.
Well, which is... By the way, if you don't know Bonnie, like she's so authentic in her social media. I just adore watching you because it's like you're just being yourself and it's I just really enjoy it. But I watch your content on there, right? So I experienced those tips and which it's also a very positive account. So, and it has cute little doggies and all sorts of things. So go follow Bonnie if you're not already following her. But I love it. I love following you. Then I experienced your in-person, which seeing your in-person style, it's really cool to see the way that you work. And you're very supportive with people. And like, you'll ask challenging questions to help them get to an answer, the clarity of their own mind. But it doesn't matter what the answer is to you. You just are trying to help them get there. So I just love the way that you ask meaningful questions. And you've been through enough experiences with enough people that you can provide a unique perspective that I think people need in order to think differently about their own stuff. Because we're just like in our own world. We've got our own clutter blindness. We've got our own, we can't come to our own space with the same perspective as somebody else can.
Right.
Yeah.
So then having me come in, and like I've mentioned before, like I am honored when people allow me into their space virtually or in person, and I get to see that space that they are uncomfortable with or is causing them stress, and that I am able like to be there to help them. I remember when I worked with your sister-in-law and I would ask questions to either you or her, and I would get a really long explanation. And I was like, hi, I just want to know, so I know where you, like, if I'm asking you how often you use it, just tell me every day, not every day. Like, I just want to know.
You're not looking for the justification necessarily.
You don't need to justify. I just want to know so I know where to put it for you. Yeah. So it's like, okay, if you have a KitchenAid mixer and you use it only to make cookies at Christmas, I'm not going to put it in the middle of your cabinet,
right? Because
that's prime real estate. So it is interesting. I do catch people justifying to me when I ask that question. So I'm like, okay, well, it's okay. Like, you can keep this. Yeah. I just want to know for you where would be the best place. Yeah. So, and that's why, full circle here, going back to Meredith's kitchen, when I went to help her for her guest room, which, by the way, I don't know if you saw.
I did, yeah.
I'm obsessed.
Yeah,
I am
amazing.
Obsessed with her guest room. And we swapped some furniture.
Yep.
And the closet.
Her dad is arriving today, by the way, so we'll put it to the test. Yeah.
Yes. But when I snuck over and looked back in her cabinet, I told her I was going to do that. It looked exactly the same because I was able to learn what she uses and when and how often. Right. So anyway, all of that to say,
this goes out to all the personalities like me who are kind of like, yeah, I think that would be awesome, but I'm not going to put forth the effort or whatever. I probably wouldn't have done anything in my own home if we weren't friends first and I didn't know you personally, but I wanted to support your business and all of that. So that was sort of like my actual motivator. And then it turned into, oh, I actually really needed this.
Do you remember the bottle organizer you bought? The
yes,
water bottle?
That was the first thing. So we were getting ready to organize Meredith's stuff, and I had pre-ordered a bunch of containers that we knew that we likely were going to need. And when I saw that, I was like, add 2 to my cart, please. The bottle organizer. Oh my God, if people don't have a bottle organizer in their cabinet.
I know.
It was the worst cabinet ever. There's no way to do it without one of those.
And I saw it in
that was the start. And then she had that broken basket thing that goes under the sink. I ordered a second one and kept the broken one.
It was a 2-tier pull-out drawer that is literally an organizer for under
That's
the sink.
Probably where I started. I started under the sink. I think that must have been like one of my first ones because I got that basket thing and I was like, all right, I guess we're going to do this thing. Cleared it all out. Oh my gosh. It's like mind-boggling when I think back.
But you so also didn't just buy containers to buy containers. You had a purpose. You decluttered first, or you just trusted my guidance even too, of like, this is going to work in your space. And you're like, okay, well, I'll try it. And so.
Yeah. And there were a few things where I didn't like the whole cutting board thing. So my lesson learned was I'm very much like I'll figure it out later. And if it's wrong, then I'll address it then kind of person. So I ordered some things without measuring and I'm like, I'm sure that's fine. And they didn't fit at all. But I did find other places for them, right? So there's like always a use, or I could give them away to somebody or whatever. It's more effort for me to return it. So I just return things. But again, this all plays into my personality. And I could find other places for them. So I was like, I'll just order. And if it doesn't work in that space, then I'll figure it out. But the container recommendations, not have to like go search on Amazon or, look at reviews or what's the price check. You've already figured all that out. So again, removing the barriers. And also there were a couple things where then I was like, okay, all of the cutting board stuff was vertical storage. Or like for the pots and pans, that was my biggest hurdle, figuring that out. So I just needed to either be creative, or there were a couple times. Now I have the benefit of knowing you, right? So I'd be like, hey, Bonnie, do you have a link for something like this? How about this container? So I could do that, which I'm sure people could DM you or something.
They do.
Yeah.
I had Alyssa yesterday while you were doing your storage stuff. I got a picture of, if only I had a bin here for the refrigerator. And she's like, do you have any recommendations? I was like, oh, hold please. And I sent her like a couple links and then sent her my storefront. I guess because we're so close to the Amazon warehouse, this was at like 2:30 p.m. At like 8:30 p.m. The bins were already in her fridge. Done. She binned her space.
Oh my gosh. That's like scary.
Amazon Prime. Yep.
What? That's wild. Yeah. But, all of those things kind of make it easier. And again, it's that experience. You can't really know until you experience, which that's why I'm so glad that I personally had I want to support my friend's business. And then I had done it with Meredith. And so I already had like a couple things that I had like, okay, well, I'll just start with my bottle shelf. I'll just start with that and I won't do like anything major. And then I did that and I was like, what else could I do? And so
what have I stumbled upon?
I know, what has she done to me? I think I told you that you turned me into a monster. I
saved our text messages. Like I screenshotted those messages.
So one of the reasons yesterday I texted you, here's the beast that we're planning to tackle tomorrow, was to hold me accountable to actually doing it. Because even though me and my husband were going to do it together, we are masters at being like, meh.
We don't have to do that.
Let's do it tomorrow, but I was like, I told Bonnie I'm going to do it, and then I'm going to feel more motivated to do it because I'm going to want to show her what I did, or she's going to ask me about it, right? That accountability is such a real thing. Even yesterday, you were like, how are things going? And in there was a lot of like, we wanted to get rid of a lot of our keepsake stuff. Like we wanted to get rid of it. And so then I felt like, we had to go through all the things because that way we're going to like actually do the project. And if I just put it back on the shelf right now, it's never actually going to get done. So we got caught in like a little bit of a cycle there. And I was surrounded by all this stuff. And you texted me, you're like, how's it going? And I was like, good. Going fine.
Everything is fine.
To have somebody be able to say, here's where you can get started. Or did you think about this? Is honestly, it just completely changes the experience. So having somebody like you is worth every penny that you invest in somebody like Bonnie. I'm not saying, just don't make that face. I know that's because you're so humble and you're like, you genuinely want to like help people. Yeah, you love the process. And I told you after we did Meredith's kitchen, like that's a life-changing thing. Like you just literally changed her life from having that space managed differently. Because she's going through a very difficult season, and that space changed her life. You're doing that, and then big and small scale, me having a organizer that keeps my bottles every single day impacts my life. And so I'm just really thankful that I had that motivation for me, because my personality isn't one that I'd be like, all right, yeah, let me go organize my kitchen. I wouldn't have done that. And so to anybody else who's thinking like, yeah, probably not for me, but cool, good for them. Just try it. And then what's the absolute worst that happens? Literally nothing bad can come of this. So anyway, it's been fun. I've had so much fun.
It has been fun. And now even thinking back, like you just wanted to be so supportive. And I think that was why you were like, I think I'm going to gift your services to my sister-in-law. And then again, with the guide, I honestly thought you're just doing it to support the business, which I appreciate. And I didn't say this to you, but I honestly didn't see you as someone who was like, oh, I'm going to take this and change my whole house. But like now, literally what we said earlier, I was over for Waffle Wednesday and Matt is like, I use the back stock of coffee, like just in plain sentences. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Like, did I brainwash all these people?
Right. It is a process and it will continue to be, but you have done such an amazing job getting started, and it all just came from $57 worth of a guide and the mental clarity and everything that you're talking about
Yeah.
That's crazy.
For your declutter dash, I think I posted on my story. Remember, I don't know how to do that. So whatever I did, and we posted it, and I said, does anybody want to do this with me? And my one friend who I grew up with since we were in kindergarten, but we barely talk anymore just because of life, you know, and we live 7 hours apart. She was like, I'll do it with you. She like messaged me. I was like, awesome. So she signed up. Then it got us texting every night, you know, she would like send me a picture of her sock drawer, you know, and so that was really sweet. I feel like if people aren't doing the in-person with you, if you get the guide and have another friend get it and do it too, it's fun. It actually can be fun.
It can be fun. Yeah. Well, I know this has nothing to do with organizing, but I am so grateful for your friendship, really. Oh. I know that Ryan and I changing churches and like that was a really big deal, and just your support of like everything I went through with my mom at the time, we became very close very fast because of just like life and being in small group again together. We told Matt this morning, we were like, just print our names on your sheet when you print it out. Like it's just permanent at this point.
Yes. It's going to be so good too. And I think it will come back into like mental health and why behind things. Did you see what we're doing?
About your purpose in life.
Yeah, like what is the goal? What's the end goal and outcome you're looking for? Gives you so much more purpose in the path toward it. And I feel like that too, like we were talking about the action leads to motivation and experiencing the end result. Then like when you're thinking about, oh gosh, my utility room is a disaster, whatever, the purpose behind it feels so much different. So you're not thinking like, oh God, I got to go organize that space and go through everything or whatever. You're thinking of what that outcome is. And that really changes the way that you approach it. You know, the more you like experience it firsthand, the more natural those thought patterns are. It really does change the way that you approach stuff and your space and how you manage it. And it's, trust me, anybody went and looked around my house, they'd be like, well, you've been organizing? Because it looks a little crazy in here.
But you had people notice.
Oh,
your mother-in-law.
Like literally as soon as she walked in the door, she was like, whoa, I can really tell that you guys have been like working on stuff. You know, it just feels like you've got so much more space in here. She knew where things were. And she's spent a lot of time in my space, but she doesn't live here. And so she missed like a chunk of time where it was like months and months and months since she had been in my house. And she came back, you know, and she was just like, whoa, this is crazy. And I was like, wow, I kind of forgot. Like, I kind of forgot how far we've come.
Yeah. I'll have people come back into our home, like family members that, you know, live further away or whatever. Yeah. And they were like, didn't you have a piece of furniture here? And I was like, shh, I got rid of that thing like 3 years ago. You don't need to be talking out loud.
We don't address that anymore.
We don't address
it. It's gone. It's gone.
Yeah. We don't talk about that thing.
I love the power of community, and you promote that so much within like this topic of just the strength that comes from having accountability or things like that. And that's true for our lives. So, you know, small group and getting plugged into, you know, supportive friendships. And then look at what that has done. It's just like, it's just so beautiful.
I really appreciate you sharing your story. I've been wanting to talk about this with you for months.
Okay, well, have me on in another 6 months. We'll do another update.
We'll do an Erin's outrageous adventure
That's
update.
Right. That's
I
exactly
might
right.
actually name that episode this.
That's perfect.
Great.
That's exactly what it is. It's outrageous. If anybody, we should do a blog so people can see the pictures that go along with these spaces.
We should.
Because they're special. It's really special. People will be like, oh, this girl, how did she survive 37 years of life? But yeah, no, it's been really fun and very freeing and very changing to my mindset by the way I approach it. Like, I'm not just like okay with the mess. Like, I see the mess differently, I think now, and I'm a different kind of okay with it, knowing that I can approach it little by little, and that when I get to that space, I can make decisions, I think, more effectively now that I've like almost built up that muscle. And so it's just, it feels different to think, oh, okay, I'm going to like tackle my whole house. I can think differently about it now.
When you showed me the picture of your storage room, I was like, she's going to do this tomorrow? Like that was something. And I was like, you go girl, but wow.
I know,
like
you said it'll feel so good to start on that. And I was like, oh, she just had to put that start in there.
Oh.
You were right. It was just a start.
That is a big undertaking. And well, when you messaged me about the organizing emergency, And then you said you were getting caught in the keepsake stuff. I said my suggestion would be to put all of that to the side, its own little zone, and come back to that and do a date night with Matt and the kids or whatever, and go through that a little bit at a time, because that will suck up a lot of time.
It'll stop the process.
It'll stop the process. Yes, and I do say this all the time, like, it will get messier. It will get worse before it gets better. And that's just the process. So
Yep. I know we're probably talking for like forever.
It's okay.
That's good. It's just so fun. I could talk to you about this all day.
I know.
Which is so funny because it's like not me.
I know.
Right? That's the thing.
I know. Or you even said, you're like, you should interview me.
Yeah, I was like, I am a case study.
And we had it on the schedule over the summer for like a live on Instagram. And then once I really started to decide on this podcast, I was like, this would just be such a great conversation, because then other people I know resonate with your story. It just gives just a different perspective. Well, thanks.
It's been fun. Thanks for having me on here. Oh my gosh.
You're my first guest speaker on the Declutter Diaries. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to the Declutter Diaries, specifically about Erin's outrageous organizing adventure. And like you heard, she mentioned using my DIY guide called The Organize Home. If you would like to purchase the guide for yourself or gift it to a friend or family member, check the link inside the show notes and it'll be right there for you to purchase. It is so easy to follow. I simplify everything. I have over 60 container recommendations literally in your pocket. Till next time, bye friends!